Okay,
If we were to pull out, the Middle East would be aflame. And so to set a firm date is absolutely not a good idea. Whether you want it to go in or did not want it to go in, to set a firm date, and the president's right, it would bring about devastation. I had a young 19-year-old soldier tell me, he said, Mr. Wolf, he said in a West Virginia accent, he said, if you pulled out, the genocide and the bloodiness would be so bad, the American people would insist that we go back and to stop the killing. So we cannot set a date, and hopefully the Secretary Baker's leadership and Lee Hamilton will be able to develop a consensus and educate the American people what is really involved. The second issue, and that's on the whole war on terror. The war on terror didn't begin on 9/11. The war on terror began when the Iranians took over the American embassy in 1980. The war on terror really began in 1983 when 241 Marines were blown up in the Marine barracks in Lebanon. And also what many people forget, our American embassy on the Kanish was blown up. CIA Station Chief Buckley had his fingers pulled out by Hezbollah. There was USS Cole. There was Cobra Coward. There was the embassy bombing in Tanzania. There was the embassy bombing in Nairobi. And in 1998, Charlie White, my chief of staff, and I were in Algeria. You don't hear much about it, but Algeria has lost about 150,000 people from terrorism. The week we were there, every day we went out in the field with a company of soldiers. When I got back, I introduced a bill to create the National Commission on Terror. Quite frankly, members on both parties ridiculed me. We passed the bill. Being on appropriations, we were able to put that in, and we passed it. It was the Bremer Commission. On the cover of the Bremer Commission, which came out in the year 2000, not 2001, but 2000, is a picture of the World Trade Center on fire. It was from 1993. So the war on terror has been going on for a long period of time, and the president is absolutely right. We are in a struggle. And to sort of walk away and say we're not going to deal with these issues is wrong. Now, I get very upset when I hear the gloom and the doom that I hear, quite frankly, sometimes from both political parties. The war against communism, which many of you were involved in and many of your parents were involved in, went on from 1945 to 1989. I remember as a young kid, probably many of you have read this book, but Whittaker Chambers' book, Witness. In Whittaker Chambers, you know, Whittaker Chambers was a member of the Communist Party that left the Communist Party. He was in that cell with Alger Hiss. In the book Witness, and if you haven't read it, go back and read it. I reread it last year again. He says, when I left the Communist Party, I believe that I was leaving the winning side, meaning he thought communism was going to win, and joining the losing side. And then Chambers goes on to say, and nothing I have seen since has led me to believe that I was wrong. Whittaker Chambers was wrong. He was wrong because people like President Truman and President Eisenhower, and many of you who served in the military, he was wrong because people like Ronald Reagan, who went to the Soviet Union and spoke in the Danilov Monastery in 1988 in the center, the heartbeat of that evil empire. And he had Ronald Reagan. You remember the speech he gave in 1983? He called it the evil empire, when he was down in Orlando, was criticized for putting cruise missiles in. The mud was thick then. And there were people in both political parties criticizing Ronald Reagan. And people got so gloom and doom. You would go to Europe and they would say, you put those missiles in, you're going to upset the Russians. Ronald Reagan put them in. He did what he had to do. And so Whittaker Chambers was wrong, and all the prophets of gloom and doom. I remember, God bless his soul, the Polish ambassador who defected and walked out of the Polish embassy and went into the White House. He came by my house one day and told me that communism was spreading through the world, and they are inevitably we're going to win. They did not win. They did not win because American people were together. Our politicians were together. We had Scoop Jackson and Ronald Reagan and Eisenhower and all those people together. So the gloom and the doom is not appropriate. On 9/11, At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Senator Warner and Senator Allen and I went to Arlington Cemetery. There was a young Marine. His name was Colin Wolfe, with an E on the end. 19 years old. Died in Anbar Province. Listen to his mother. He was 14 years old when he saw the towers go down and wanted us to serve. Go out to Walter Reed and talk to the men and women there. Listen to them. They want to go back. The Ryukyans are up. We're in a global struggle. And it's not appropriate for Americans to be pessimistic in both political parties. I hear members of my party as well as the other party talk about, oh, I don't know what we're going to have to do, what we're going to do. Well, what did America do in 1954, to 55, and 61 to 62? Because of people like Ronald Reagan and because of many of you or your fathers and mothers and different people, we were together. We will prevail in this effort. Unfortunately, it will go on for a long while. I have 5 children and 12 grandchildren. I probably will not live to see the end, just as my father, who died in 1982, never saw the Berlin Wall fall. But his son gets to see the Berlin Wall fall. I may never see the defeat of Al-Qaeda and the defeat of terrorism, but my children and my grandchildren will. So I would just want to take 2 things away. Be not dismayed. Don't be gloomy. Don't be negative. The American way is kind of roll up your sleeves and deal with this issue. Quite frankly, we are doing better than many, many people think, and hopefully, with the strong support of the Iraq Study Group, we'll be able to convince the American people that if we just literally pull back and pull out the danger to this country, because they are coming. They are committed to coming after us. It isn't like you're negotiating with a government that you can say, well, wait a minute, if we just kind of do this, will you do that? Read the words. Read the words of Osama bin Laden. They're coming after us. Not with IEDs, with chemical, biological, nuclear. He says in that one book he loves death. And so we ought not be dismayed, and we ought not be depressed. And there are young men and women that are out there that are making a tremendous difference. It will be a long struggle, but with a positive attitude. And the American way, and this is the greatest country in the world because we have taken people from every other nation. My grandfather came here and as a German baker. My father was sent home from school because he couldn't speak English. Yet we blended people from every part of the world to come in together. Into Congress, about once every 6 months, the voting machine breaks down. You know, we vote with this little plastic card. And so when the machine breaks down, they call the roll. And when they call the roll, there are names from all over the world, from every continent. So we are made up of the very best in this nation, and we will prevail in this fight against terrorism. So do not be dismayed. We will prevail. The last comment I want to make is this is an important election. We're also running this election on one other basis. Not only on what I have done, but on how I have done it. You have never seen an article in the paper whereby Wolf divides this community. Wolf attacks people who have done things, whether you're Republican, Democrat, independent, whatever, to bring people together to solve problems, to make a difference. So it is on those 2 issues, on what I have done and how I have done to run it. Now, to follow what Ed said, I need your help.